All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As I told you, I was not going to be here today, so that is why I am making this recording. Today we are going to start off with 2-4b, and we're going to continue talking about our linear equations. Yesterday we talked about our three linear equations. We talked about y equals mx plus b, so our slope-intercept form. We talked about point-slope form, and we're going to also talk about standard form. And we're going to be using those interchangeably today, but today we're also going to add parallel and perpendicular lines. So we're going to throw all of that together. So our learning goal today is to write equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. But first, what we're going to do today is we're going to review what we did yesterday. We're going to review some stuff with standard form and point slope form. So right now I'm reading this word problem. It says the office manager of a small office ordered 140 packs of printer paper, and based on average daily use, she knows that paper will last about 80 days. So we're going to set up this problem and we're kind of tracking to see how much paper is lasting this company. So for my problem, I'm going to say X represents number of days. And so that means the other thing we were talking about in this problem is Y is going to represent the amount of paper. So when I read that first part saying when we start, we have 140 packs. So what that means is we are at day 0, and at day 0, I have 140 packs. The other thing that we underline, 80 days, means we are at 80 days, and she's saying we run out of paper, so we have 0 amount of paper. Now, what we learned yesterday when I was with you guys is when we are given 2 points, from there we can find our slope. So if I'm given 2 points, I'm going to find my slope. So we have m equals, and we're taking our y2 minus y1. So I'm going to have 0 minus 140, and on bottom then we are going to have 80 minus 0. That top is going to equal negative 140, and on bottom that's going to equal 80. Now both of these are reducible by 20, so our slope is negative 7/4. Now the other equation that we learned yesterday is if I have a slope and I'm given some points, I can then put it into point slope form. The point I'm going to pick to put into point slope form is going to be this one. I think it's going to be a lot easier, and you're going to see why. So my point slope form, I'm going to use PS for point slope form, is going to be y minus, so in for my y1, I'm going to plug in 140. And my slope is negative 7/4 that we just found. And then we're going to have x minus 0. Now a reminder, that's not what they are really asking us to do. What they're asking us to do is to find standard form. But remember, we use point slope form to help us find standard form. So I'm going to take this answer that we just found, and I'm going to use it to help us find standard form. Now a reminder, standard form, I'm going to write this up over here. Standard form is this, and remember it's very picky. It can't have fractions, it can't have decimals, and our A has to be positive. So if I'm trying to make this equation look like our green equation here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute this negative 7/4. And I think some of you see right away why I picked that first point, because now what I have is I have y minus 140 equals negative 7/4 x, and then when I take that negative 7/4 times 0, well, that's just 0, it goes away, so I don't even have that. So now, Matt, watch out, I'm drawing a line here. This negative 7/4, it has to go over here, and this 140 has to go over here. So we're just going to be adding those onto both sides. So what I'm going to have now is I'm going to have 7/4 x plus y equals 140. Now, as what we talked about yesterday, we cannot have fractions. So I see I have a 4 here on the bottom, so I'm going to multiply everything by 4. When I do that, those cancel. I'm going to have 7x. That 4 is also going to go to my y, so I'm going to have plus 4y. And this 4 is also going to go to this 140. So when I plug that into my calculator and I multiply those two, I'm going to get 560. So that is our answer in standard form. Okay. Now as I go on to the next part of this, I will need to use that equation again because it says how many packs of paper should the manager expect to have after 30 days. Now if we remember 30 days represents our x. So I'm going to take the equation we just found, our 7x plus 4y equals 560. I'm going to replace x with 30 because that represents days. And then we are now going to solve for y because I'm trying to find out how much paper I have. So I'm going to take 7 times 30, we're going to get 210. I'm going to minus that 210 from both sides. I have 4y equals, we're going to plug that in or do it by hand, however you feel comfortable. We're going to have 350, and then we're going to divide by 4, and when we do that, when we take in our calculators 350 divided by 4, we are going to get y equals 87.5. And what that represents is packs of paper. Okay, so that's taking everything that we learned yesterday and putting it into a word problem. But now today, what we are going to actually be talking about are parallel and perpendicular lines. Now, a couple of things we need to know about parallel lines. Parallel lines have the same slope. That's probably our most important thing that we need to know. But they have different y-intercepts. If I'm looking at this graph here with these two lines, they have to have the same slope because they have to have the same rise over run. They have to have the same rate going up that graph, but they need to have different y-intercepts. If they don't, it would be the exact same line. As we know, parallel lines, they follow each other forever and ever and ever, but they never cross or they never intersect. And those are probably words that you guys should remember from geometry from last year. Now, today, what we're going to do, if I'm going to find a line that is parallel to another line, the first thing I have to do is identify the slopes, because as we just found out, our same slope is our most important thing we have to know about parallel lines. Once you do that, you are then going to put it into point slope form because you are going to be given a new point. And then from there, you're just going to read directions. Do they want you to put it into slope intercept form? Do they want you to put it in standard form? Or just leave it in point slope form? It is up to you. Actually, it's not up to you. It's up to whatever the paper says. Okay, so our first problem here says write an equation for the line that is parallel to this y equals negative 2x plus 1. And it goes to the point negative 2, 5, and very nicely we're going to leave this into point slope form. So the number one thing we have to do is identify our slope. So I see here the equation they gave us starts in slope intercept form. So we already know our slope is negative 2. And as we just learned, or maybe remember, slopes are the same for parallel lines. So if I'm using my parallel slope, I'm going to use para for parallel. So my parallel slope then is negative 2 because they are exact same. And then they gave us this point. So now I'm going to put this into point slope form. I'm going to write point slope form just in case some of us have already forgotten it. So that's our point slope form. So I'm going to plug that in. So I'm going to have y minus, and for my y1, I have 5. Our parallel slope that we just found is negative 2. And I'm going to have x minus, and our x1 is a negative 2. So I have minus negative 2, which we know right away we have to turn into plus. And they said leave it in point slope form. So that is our answer. Okay. All right, so for our next problem here, it says we have line AB and it goes through the points 2, 3, and negative 1, 2. And it says, what is the line that is parallel to AB and goes to the point 6, 3? And we're going to simplify it to slope-intercept form this time. So the first thing we have to do is we don't nicely have our slope. We actually have to find it. So if I'm ever given 2 points, that's what I have to do first. I have to find my slope. So I'm going to have 2 minus 3. I have negative 1 minus 2. On top there, that's going to equal negative 1. And on bottom, I have negative 1 minus 2, so I'm going to have negative 3. I have a negative over a negative, so it's going to be positive. So that's the slope of this original line that they gave us of AB. So that means if this slope is 1/3, that means my parallel slope is also 1/3. So now I have a slope, I have a point, so that means I'm going to plug it into point-slope form. So I have y minus 3 equals 1/3, and I have x minus 6. And now what they're telling us is we have to put it into slope-intercept form, and a reminder that is our y equals mx plus b. So now I have to make this equation look like our y equals mx plus b. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute this 1/3. So now I have y minus 3 equals 1/3 x. When I take a third of 6, that negative 6 is going to turn into negative 2. And then my last step is I'm going to add 3, and I have run out of room. Hold on. And now I have y equals 1/3 x plus 1. And that is our answer. Okay. So those are parallel lines. So then the next thing we are going to talk about are perpendicular. And terrible news, perpendicular is trickier than parallel. So perpendicular lines, they cross at right angles. It's very important that we know that they cross at right angles because there are lines that cross, but if they're not at a right angle, we don't consider those to be perpendicular. Now our slopes this time are not the same. This is probably the largest difference. What we call them are opposites, which is the negative reciprocal slope. So I'm going to give you a hint. So if I start off with a slope of 2/3, my perpendicular slope, I'm going to use perp slope, we then flip it, so the reciprocal, and if it's positive, it's going to turn negative, so it's going to be negative 3/2. So if you had the opposite, if it started negative, it then would be positive. So the sign changes. So those are the two things that happen to our slope. It's a little bit different. So just like last time, we are going to be finding our slope and our points and putting them into whatever form they want us to put it in. Here our question says, what is the slope of the perpendicular line in each example? I start off with this one. It's very nicely in y equals mx plus b. So that means my slope is 3. So if I'm going to find my perpendicular slope, so my perp slope, this 3, it's theoretically, it's over 1. So when I find the reciprocal of it, that's going to be 1/3. And then because this original slope is starting positive, my perpendicular slope is going to be negative. And that is our answer. This one here, this 2x plus 3y equals 9, they are starting off in standard form. So again, to know the slope, I have to put it into y equals mx plus b to know my slope. So I have to make this equation look like that. So I'm going to minus 2x on both sides, minus 2x. I now have 3y equals negative 2x plus 9. I'm going to divide everything by 3. So now my equation is y equals negative 2/3 x plus 3. So now that I'm in slope-intercept form, I know my slope. I know my slope is negative 2/3, which means my perpendicular slope, my perp slope, I'm going to flip it, so it's going to be 3/2, and because this time it's starting negative, it's now going to be positive. So that is my perp slope. All right, so that's how we do that if they give us equations to start with. This next part, we have a graph. So reminder, slope is rise over run. So if I'm looking at my graph here, and I'm looking at the points they gave us, I'm noticing they go down. They're going down 2, and they're going right 1. So my slope is negative 2/1. So that means, again, for my perpendicular slope, I'm going to flip it. So it's going to be 1/2. And if it's starting out negative, that means my new slope is going to be positive. So my new slope is going to be positive 1/2. Finally, again, if I'm given 2 points, I know that means that I have to find slope, and we're going to use our slope equation. So I'm going to have m equals, on top, we are going to have 2 minus 3. On bottom, I have 0 minus 4. On top, we're going to have -1, and on bottom, we're going to have -4. Since I have a negative over a negative, that is going to turn positive, and I'm going to have positive 1/4. So if that's my original slope, that means my perp slope, my perpendicular slope, I need to flip it. So it's going to be 4/1, or you could just have 4, however you want to leave that. And since the original one starts out positive, my perpendicular slope is going to be negative, and that is our answer. All right, same thing that we did with parallel. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm trying to, okay, there we go. We are going to be given an equation, and we're going to be given a point, and we have to put it into point slope form. Now, it's very important now that you are reading the directions. What kind of line are they asking for? They're asking for a perpendicular. We were given an equation, we're given a point, and again, we're leaving it in point slope form. Very nicely, this equation is in slope-intercept form. So we know our slope already is -4. So that means my perpendicular slope, I need to flip it. So it's going to be 1/4. And since the original starts off negative, this one is now positive. I then am going to take my perp slope, I'm going to take my point, and I'm going to put it into point slope form. So I'm going to have y minus 5. My slope is 1/4, and we're going to have x minus 8. And that is our answer. Okay. All right, we are flipping pages. We have a couple extra problems, and we'll just do those real quick now that we've had some practice. Our first one says, again, we're writing it in parallel form. Mr. Pesh very nicely underlined stuff for you. I wouldn't have done that if I was doing your guys' notes. So we're finding a parallel. We are starting in standard form. It has to go through this point, and we have to leave it in slope-intercept form. So first of all, we do not know slope, so I have to take this standard form and I have to put it into y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to minus 4x, minus 4x. I have 2y equals negative 4x plus 7. I need to divide everything by 2. So I'm going to have y equals negative 2x plus, and this doesn't really affect us, but we could just leave it as 7/2. So that means my slope is -2. My parallel slope, and if we remember from when we already started today, our slope is -2. I'm going to take my parallel slope, I'm going to take my point, and I'm going to put it into point slope form. So I have y minus -2. I'm going to turn that into pluses right away. My slope is -2, and I'm going to have x minus 4. So now again, though, we're asking for a slope-intercept form, so we can't leave it like this. So I have to put it into y equals mx plus b. I'm going to distribute this negative 2 here. I have y plus 2 equals negative 2x. I have negative 2 times negative 4. That's going to give us positive 8. I'm going to minus 2, and our answer is going to be y equals negative 2x plus 6. And there we go. All right, our last one. Thank goodness. This time we are finding a line that is perpendicular. He didn't underline this for you guys this time. This time we are very nicely, we're starting in y equals mx plus b. That kind of helps us. It goes through this point, but this time, we have to put it into standard form. So this one, I already know my slope. They already gave that to us. Our slope is 3. So that means my perp slope, my perpendicular slope, I have to flip it, so it's going to be 1/3. And our slope is starting positive, so it means this one is negative. We then are going to take our point and our slope, and we are going to put it into point slope form. So I have y minus 2 equals negative 1/3, and I'm going to have x minus 9. We now are going to put this into standard form. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute that negative 1/3. So I have y minus 2 equals negative 1/3 x. Now when I have negative 1/3 times negative 9, I'm taking a third of 9. So I have a negative times a negative, so it's going to be positive 3. We then have to move this negative 1/3 over here. I have to move this negative 2 over here. So when I do that, I now have positive 1/3 x plus y, and we added that 2 to that other side. So now I have equals 5. Now again, we cannot have fractions. So I see a 3 here. So that means I'm going to multiply everything by 3. When I do that, these cancel, so I'm just going to have x. This 3 is going to go to this y, so I'm going to have plus 3y. And it's also going to go to that 5, so I'm going to have equals 15. And there we go. All right, so that is how we find parallel and perpendicular lines. Make sure you are reading the directions. Make sure you are reading, do they want parallel? Do they want perpendicular? Do they want point slope form? Do they want standard form? So make sure you're reading all your directions. And then reminder, we do have a test on Friday, and I will see you guys tomorrow.